Hello viewers, this is the Cross Moto channel. France is amazing. And if now the French motorcycle industry is hard to see without a microscope, and among modern French two-wheeler brands, I can only name Peugeot off the top of my head. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, the French led car and motorcycle manufacturing. For example, one of the first motorcycles in history was built in France. It was a bicycle with a steam engine designed by Louis-Guillaume Perrault in 1869. And in the interwar period of the 20th century, there were a lot of motorcycle companies in France. However, as often happens in history, golden ages are followed by dark ages. The crisis of the European motorcycle industry in the 1960s and 1970s did not spare the French. Most companies disappeared and the market was flooded with Japanese machines. At the end of the 1970s, the French Ministry of Industry held a competition to create a people's French motorcycle. And in order to save on engine design and to make the final product cheaper and easier to maintain, the condition was to use a mass-produced automobile power unit. It was thanks to this program that a number of interesting designs appeared, such as the BFG 1300 Moto Franchise 650 and Picardo Aero 97. However, in all three cases, these projects ended in failure, and the vehicles were produced in extremely small numbers. In this video, I'll talk in detail about the Grand Tourer BFG 1300, and we'll cover the other two machines in separate episodes. Make yourself comfortable and enjoy watching. In 1978, the Ministry of Industry held that very competition. It was won by a group consisting of Louis Picardo, Dominique Favario, and Thierry Grange. Louis Picardo would later help with the Moto Franchise 650 and Picardo Aero 97 projects. The company and motorcycle names were created using the first letters of the trio's surnames, BFG. The responsibility for BFG's activities was assigned to the manufacturer Motorola, and the company began developing the motorcycle. And 800,000 francs were allocated for this project, which is about €500,000 by today's standards. The engine, as planned, was taken from a car. It was a four-stroke, four-cylinder, air-cooled boxer engine from a Citroën GSA. The specifications are as follows: displacement of 1,299 cc. Max power is 70 horsepower at 5,500 revolutions per minute. Maximum torque is 100 Newton meters at 3,200 revolutions per minute. The engine had a flat torque curve and strong low-end power, which was perfect for a tourer. Here's an interesting fact: even at idle speed, which is about 800 revolutions per minute, 68 Newton meters of torque were available. The choice fell on this engine because it was produced in huge numbers. From 1970 to 1986, 2.5 million Citroën GSA cars were made. This meant that there should be absolutely no problems finding parts and servicing this unit. You could repair it and find parts for it even in the most remote backwater. Initially, in order to save money, BFG looked for ready-made solutions for the transmission. They considered options from Moto Guzzi and even from Laverdy V6000, but couldn't come to an agreement on supply, so they had to develop the transmission from scratch. This event led to additional expenses and delayed the project. In the end, a proprietary 5-speed gearbox was developed, which transmitted power through a drive shaft and a Citroën differential to the rear wheel. The Citroën engine was installed in the frame almost without any modifications. An electric fuel pump was added, and the ignition distributor was redesigned. And for aesthetics, different valve covers were installed so it would look nice in the frame. Otherwise, the BFG 1300 was a large, heavy tourer with a frame made of steel tubes, and the engine served as a stressed member. The rear suspension was a swing arm with dual shock absorbers. The front fork was from the Spanish company Telesco. Brembo brakes were used, and the 18-inch wheels were fitted with Italian FPS tires. The bike weighed 290 kilograms fully equipped with a fuel tank of 22 liters, some sources say 26, and fuel consumption of about 5 liters per 100 kilometers. By the way, the Grand Tourer from BFG could boast a top speed of 200 kilometers per hour, despite weighing almost 300 kilograms. Those who rode the BFG 1300 noted its fairly easy handling, all thanks to its low center of gravity. Special thanks to the Boxer engine and the balanced weight distribution. For example, the fuel tank was located under the seat to free up space in the dummy tank for the Solex carburetor and the air filter. The first prototype was ready in 1980 and was presented during the Tour de France, where it received noticeable success from professional motorcyclists. It is worth noting that 10 people in the BFG workshop, with a very limited budget, created a finished motorcycle in just a year and a half. Believe me, that's very effective. In the end, 3 prototypes were made: a test naked, a semi-fared Gran Turismo Allegorita, and a fully fared Gran Turismo Berlinetta. By 1982, the model was ready for production, with plans to make 500 motorcycles annually. In the Gran Turismo Allegorita and Gran Turismo Berlinetta versions, the expected prices were 29,500 francs for the Gran Turismo Allegorita and 32,000 francs for the Gran Turismo Berlinetta. These are prices as of 1982. If you convert them to today's prices, it would be 19,000 euros and 20,500 euros, respectively. In the end, only the Gran Turismo Berlinetta went into production. Here, for comparison, are the competitors' prices at the same time in 1982. Honda Goldwing, 1,100, 27,800 francs, and BMW 100 RT, 32,000 francs. Many parts in the 1,300 came from the French automotive industry: mirrors from the Fiat Panda, a headlight from the Renault 16, an instrument panel from the Renault 5 Alpine, and a fuel level sensor from the Citroën 2 Chevaux Vapeur. The motorcycle was made in La Ravoire, a small town in the French Alps. From 1982 to 1983, about 400 units of the BFG 1300 were produced. And it seemed like the production start was pretty good, but financial difficulties arose almost immediately. BFG had a plan to get a contract to supply their creation to the Gendarmerie, and this move could have really helped the company. At an early stage, the Gendarmerie leadership literally guaranteed the following: "We will definitely order a large batch of equipment from you. We swear on our mothers, vive la France. Just give us a few for a test drive to start." And BFG provides the agency with 12 units of the BFG 1200 for testing in 1982. That's right, it's 1,200. This version used a Citroën G11 flat engine instead of the G13, with 1,129 cc displacement and 56 horsepower. After the tests, it was planned to deliver a batch of 160 vehicles to the gendarmes. In addition to the tests, the motorcycles appeared at various parades and as part of the motorcade for top officials. One unit was given by then President of France, François Mitterrand, to the King of Spain, Juan Carlos I, in 1982. Well, why not? National pride? By that time, the BFG company had already invested money in expanding its production facilities in anticipation of a contract with the law enforcement agency. But unfortunately, the Gendarmerie let the domestic manufacturer down. The contract never came. And at the end of 1983, BFG went bankrupt. And it's quite possible that during all this fuss, someone pocketed a wad of cash while lobbying for someone's interest, but that's just speculation. Motobecan, being the regulatory authority, bought out BFG and moved production to Saint-Quentin in the north of France. Between 1984 and 1988, they made 150 more motorcycles, averaging just under 40 per year, not a high volume. About 15 of the bikes were supplied to customs officers. These motorcycles were equipped with a single seat and Krauser cases with communication equipment for the officers, who previously rode BMW R60 SS. The MBK 1300 was incredible, but after a year, its downsides became clear. With intensive use, maintenance of the MBK 1300 turned out to be more expensive, and the heavy weight and linear compliant engine characteristics made high-speed interception on this motorcycle impossible. And after a year, the MBK 1300 was retired, making way for the BMW R80 RT and Yamaha XJ 900. Motobeacon failed to promote this model on the European market, and in 1988, production of the opposed twin tourer was discontinued. In 1989, Sorol, a manufacturer of motorcycle sidecars, bought all the remaining motorcycle parts and assembled 10 units equipping them with sidecars along the way. Sorol also supported the community of owners of this machine with spare parts, and eventually a club of enthusiasts for this motorcycle was formed, which in 1996 bought the remaining spare parts from Sorol for their own needs. It is interesting to note that about 400 out of 560 of these motorcycles are still alive and running. To this day, most of them have already covered more than 100,000 kilometers, and some have odometers showing over 500,000. This shows the French motorcycle's high reliability. As Thierry Grange said in the early 80s, France is the largest motorcycle market in the world without a national manufacturer. Every year, 200,000 French people buy a motorcycle, most often a Japanese one, when it could have been a French one. The more I worked on this story, the more I realized I was caught up in a detective story. How did a fairly successful design never reach mass production? Where was the French government with its lobbying and subsidies for domestic manufacturers? Several factors led to BFG's failure. The political elite were uncertain about producing a large motorcycle. For example, the son of then Prime Minister Raymond Barre was injured in a motorcycle accident, and you can imagine what Barre's attitude towards such vehicles was. It is also known that back in 1978, a high-ranking official of the Ministry of Road Safety, Girando, believed that heavy motorcycles should be completely banned from public roads. And in the corridors of political buildings, people whispered that this tactic was motivated not so much by road safety concerns as by serving certain interests. In fact, the French motorcycle market was manipulated to redirect it towards small engine vehicles, specifically the ones in which the French excelled, Peugeot and Motobeacon scooters. As another example, add the unprofitable production of BFG. At its worst, the company was losing 5,000 francs on each motorcycle, and Louis Bacardot left the company as early as 1981. He was the main person responsible for the development and design of the machine. BFG had two options, either grow or die. Despite all the efforts of Thierry and Favario to attract investment or merge with another company, nothing worked out. And Motobeacon, going through some tough years, preferred to stick to what they knew best, producing lightweight, small displacement vehicles. That is the story of the great French tourer, BFG 1300. A motorcycle that was intended to become the national pride of France. But in the end, only a little more than 500,000 were produced. On this note, my story comes to an end. As always, this was the Cross Moto channel. Thank you so much for watching and for your activity, subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing. Special thanks to everyone who supports my channel financially using the details pinned in the description. See you next time.